Hey everyone, thanks for joining. I'm Dr. Reba Peoples, board certified psychiatrist and founder of Imara Health and Wellness. My mission is to empower you to become a steward of your own health and architect of your own destiny. Today we're going to be talking about summer seasonal depression. Now, living in Minnesota where I practice, we hear a lot about winter depression, which is a form of depression that's related to changes in seasons. So it starts and ends around the same time each year, and typically people who do have seasonal depression tend to find that they have a relatively normal mood throughout the other seasons of the year. What you may not know is that roughly 5 to 10% of people with seasonal affective disorder actually have symptoms starting in the summer instead of in the winter. Now, we're not 100% sure what causes seasonal depression, but the major theories have to do with changes in the body's internal clock. So, our bodies naturally secrete a hormone called melatonin in response to the natural light and dark cycles. So when we have changes in seasons, we tend to see differences in the length of days, so longer days in the summer and shorter days in the winter. So people with seasonal affective disorder have a harder time regulating their internal clocks in relation to those changes. Now, we do see a few key differences between summer seasonal depression and winter seasonal depression. So winter depression tends to be characterized by feeling really sluggish and lethargic, carb craving, weight gain, social withdrawal, and a tendency to want to sleep more. Whereas with summer depression, we tend to see more of an agitated, anxious depression. So people tend to have trouble with insomnia, their moods tend to be a little bit more irritable, they may have trouble with low appetite. And the real danger with summer depression is that people with summer seasonal depression tend to be more likely to feel suicidal as a result of their symptoms. Now, of course, seasonal depression exists on a spectrum, so not everyone qualifies for an actual clinical diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder. So some people just have symptoms that are enough to cause a noticeable change in mood, but not enough to cause an actual clinical diagnosis of seasonal affective disorder. And by clinical diagnosis, I mean that the symptoms are severe enough that they're actually causing an impairment in your ability to function. So, missing work or not taking care of family-related obligations, not taking care of personal obligations, maybe even having, suicidal thinking. Those sorts of things are what tend to qualify as functional impairment when we're talking about depression. So what are some things that you can do if you do find that you're struggling with summer sadness or even summer seasonal affective disorder? One of the first tips is to remember to keep cool. So there's some thinking that the elevation in body temperature during the warm weather in the summer is partially responsible for aggravating symptoms in summer depression. So people with summer seasonal affective disorder do find that staying in air conditioning or keeping fans going or even using cooling blankets can be really helpful for helping alleviate symptoms. One of the second tips is to be aware of light exposure. So with winter depression, we hear a lot of talk about using bright light boxes to help regulate those natural circadian rhythms. With summer seasonal depression, however, too much light exposure can actually cause more harm than good and be a little bit agitating for people who do have summer seasonal depression. So you want to make sure that when you are outdoors that you're wearing sunglasses and that you're generally protected from the light. You also want to be aware of your electronic devices, so using blue light blocking filters for your computer screens, or even wearing blue light blocking sunglasses while using your electronic devices can also be very helpful. A third tip is to remember to stick to a routine sleep schedule. So part of the issue with seasonal affective disorder is that it really disrupts our natural internal clocks. So making sure that you're sticking to a routine sleep schedule can be very beneficial. You may also want to consider investing in a good pair of blackout curtains so that you're not woken up in the early morning by sunshine. So having that pair of blackout curtains really ensures that you're able to get that full 7 to 9 hours of uninterrupted sleep. A fourth tip is to make sure that you don't isolate yourself. So oftentimes with summer depression, because people do feel worse when they're outdoors or exposed to direct sunlight, they tend to turn down a lot of social invitations. So, going to a barbecue or going to the beach or going to the picnic can really be a pretty negative experience for someone who is dealing with summer depression. So you do want to make sure that you're scheduling time with your friends. So if being outdoors is something that aggravates symptoms, making sure that you're scheduling indoor time. So, catching a movie with your friends or having a game night can be ways to ensure that you're staying social during the summer. A fifth tip is to consider natural melatonin boosters. So sunlight exposure does tend to lower melatonin levels. So there are certain foods that do tend to be natural melatonin boosters. So typically tropical fruits like bananas, pineapples, and oranges can be good sources of natural melatonin. Also tart cherries or cherry juice, goji berries, raspberries, almonds, and walnuts are also natural melatonin boosters. Now, in addition to those tips, it's certainly important to remember to continue to take good care of yourself. So making sure that you're eating phytonutrient-dense whole foods, making sure that you're avoiding processed foods, chemical additives, and refined sugars, making sure that you're exercising regularly, and making sure that you're building in quiet time into your schedule. And, certainly if you are finding that your symptoms are rising to the level of, actually causing functional impairment, or if you're even finding that you're having suicidal thoughts, then it is important to make sure that you seek out professional help. So that's it. Hopefully you've heard some great tips to help curb your summertime sadness. If you did like what you heard, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And if there are any future topics that you'd like to see covered, also be sure to share in the comment section below. As always, be well and God bless.